Okay, well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the VTech podcast. Today we are going to be discussing the adoption of cloud computing and SaaS applications and the way that they've skyrocketed in recent years and have enabled enterprise companies to both operate and be more efficient with distributed workforces. Global companies with a geographically distributed workforce have to take data security more seriously. Sorry about that. And implement a comprehensive security plan to protect their employees and more importantly, their sensitive company data. In this first episode of the VTech Vocals podcast, I am your host, Mike Pereira. I'm one of the senior directors here at VTech Solution. And today we have with us our guest speaker, Mr. Ben Malasau. He is a lead security certification training and lead advocate for SGS North America. Welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Thank you, Michael. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And thank you for the audience being here with us today on VTech Vocals. So again, today we'll be talking about a move to secure distributed work environments and the key challenges that companies face when distributed working models, protection of corporate assets, approaches to achieving remote work environment productivity, and again, security. The audience can ask questions during the live session, and we'll send a token of appreciation to people who ask those questions during the session.
If I ask a question, can I get a token of appreciation?
You can get as many as you like, Ben.
All right, outstanding. Thank you. I hope it's a t-shirt.
That's the benefit of being a guest. Yes, a t-shirt and a free mug.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. Then it makes it all worth it.
That's right. Well, we're going to jump into it. We've got a short time here, about a 30-minute window on this particular podcast. So we'll jump right into the questions, and I'll start, Ben, with the first question. In your opinion, sir, what are some of the non-technical risks of remote meetings that have evolved in the past year?
Excellent question. I think we're all familiar with these. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know, but I think we've seen the things like loss of physical control of the space, isolation. We're used to working in a corporate environment and organizations, building and facilities and physical plant, where the only other people physically around you are other employees, people who have usually need to know and the appropriate clearance level for discussing these confidential business matters. When we bring it into the home or a coffee shop or a hotel or wherever, you have necessarily other people who do not have need to have access to that information. And simply while you're having a Zoom chat or while you're writing an email, people are walking back and forth behind you, often family members, but sometimes not, that while you may trust them implicitly, they don't have a need to know some information, and they may be given access to information that is not in their purview. So that's a huge risk, losing the control of the physical area. Then there's the physical risk to the devices themselves. We're using a lot of portables, again, necessarily in order to distribute the work environment. These portables not only can be lost, can be broken, they're being taken off site, but they're usually high value items with good aftermarket resale value, making them a target for theft. So forget about the data, forget about the operational side of things. The very fact that you're carrying around a tablet or a laptop makes those things a target for criminals. Other non-technical risks, you're running into a weird blend of what is the workplace and what responsibilities does the employer have to the employee when they're not sitting on the employer's property. And conversely, what duties does the employee owe the employer when the employee's in their own home, when they're ostensibly not acting on what are considered normal work hours for their position. Because again, another part of the distributed global environment is we're not tethered to a 9 to 5 schedule anymore. If I want to get some of my work done at 10 o'clock at night after, I don't have kids, but after the kids are asleep, or you've already walked the dog, or, your spouse or partner is headed to bed, is that still some time of the day that the employer is accountable for? Are you getting remuneration for that? If something happens to you in your home, is your employer legally liable to protect you or take care of you? All of these things are additional risks outside the technical sphere, which I think we're already familiar with and trying to handle. And I don't think this past year has truly answered any of those questions. It's just raised those questions, and we're going to have to kind of try to resolve them over the next few years.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, it changes the whole BYOD type environment, right?
Exactly. Instead, it's BYOE, bring your own environment. Now the device might belong to the employer, but it's inside the employee's home, right?
Right. No, very interesting. Okay. Next question. How can employees mitigate their liabilities in working from home? I mean, that kind of segues, us into.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Great question. The employees have to be given adequate training. They have to understand the risks and the liabilities that are going to be associated with their activities. And it's a double-edged sword. We want them to protect their employer's assets, but we also want to protect the employees from intrusiveness or invasiveness on the part of the employer as well. So training is going to be a big part of it. I think our policies need to start reflecting reality a lot better than they have in the past. We used to have just, your basic either mobile device policy or acceptable use policy, and it spelled out certain things about what you have to do. You have to set up the lock on your phone, or you have to have multi-factor authentication. We have to go beyond that now, and our policies have to reflect that these devices and this work is being performed at an employee-owned work site. And we need to structure contracts that are fair to both parties and take into account these new risks. And we have to make those legally binding so that, again, everyone is protected by this umbrella. That's going to be a huge step. And usually that's not going to come from the employees. The employees aren't going to structure their own contracts. So we need to have the employers do that, but they have to have some representation from the employees to make sure their needs are being met as well. Other things employees can do, they can be given the physical security tools in addition to the training on how to operate them, so that even though a laptop or a tablet or something might be left unattended in the employee's home, they can still physically secure those things, whether that's a cable lock or whether that's some remote destruct capability, some sort of additional safeguard to make sure that that thing stays in the control of the employee and not anybody else in the employee's general area.
Right. No, that's a good point. Next question here, then, what legal implications will remote working create in the future?
This is the one that scares me the most because there are many here. And I'm going to start with the employee-employer relationship because that's the one we're most familiar with from a professional standpoint. And then I'd like to segue into another. First is, what happens if I'm at my home, I'm doing a Zoom chat for my work, and I have a heart attack? Is this a work-related injury? is the employer somehow responsible for this beyond just the comprehensive medical insurance that they might have? What if the employer has caused this? Is this a workplace injury, which may be treated differently according to regulators, depending on the jurisdiction you're located in? What if I'm carrying my laptop from one room to another, I trip and I fall, and the laptop bangs me on the head? Again, is this a workplace injury, even though it's not taking place in what we consider the traditional work environment? And those are the simple employer-employee ones. Let's go a bit further and think about the intrusiveness of inviting an external entity into your home. And I want to go beyond the employer-employee and go into, for instance, one of the most risky examples that I've seen, the student-teacher relationship. Now that we've been doing a lot of remote learning, we've had quite literally an invitation of government agents, that is, the teachers and administrators, into the homes of the children that they're conveying instruction to. More than one incident has occurred where a teacher or administrator has viewed something in the room or home of the child that has upset the teacher or administrator, and the teacher or administrator has initiated legal proceedings against the parents. That's terrifying, because what you have now is video observation of children, often in their bedrooms, in their homes, which are supposed to be under the control of the parents. Now, some of the situations were slightly innocuous. A teacher saw a flag or a poster they did not like that had some language on it they did not like. Well, at least in the United States, the teacher is pretty much going to have to learn to live with that situation. That is beyond the scope of the teacher's control. That is the child's room. It is the parent's home. Teacher's just going to have to deal with that. In other situations, we've seen teachers who've reported what they described as children having weapons, which they felt created an intimidating or violent classroom environment. And this gets a little trickier here. If a kid has a toy gun in their hand or in their room while the class is going on, is that the child conveying a threat, or is that the child just being a child in their room, in their home? Right. And then one step further, one of the most difficult situations that I remember reading about was during one of the live instruction sessions, one of the child's siblings, who is autistic, ran naked through the house, including in the background of the child's webcam, so that they appeared on the screen naked to the rest of the class. And the teacher, when they were reporting this situation, initially misreported it as a naked adult entering the classroom environment, which of course is, fraught with all sorts of other problems. Right. But how do you handle something like this? And where are we drawing the lines, and how should the courts and the oversight regulators deal with situations like this? Is it unfair to the child to have that intrusiveness in their home? Is it an onus on the parents to create some sort of learning space inside their own home, which goes beyond what they would choose to do on their own property? And is it the responsibility of the teachers to monitor and observe those things when they think there's a dangerous situation? They may have the best of intentions in caring for the children in their charge, but they may be overstepping their legal and moral duties and imposing their will on the customer, which is the parents. So this is going to be really interesting. I would say it would probably be smarter to go to a motif like we're having right now, where there's just a screen with some visuals on it, and you're not looking into my home, I'm not looking into your home. Unfortunately, when you do that, you lose some of the personal interaction in the classroom between the instructor and the children. I've been a grade school and high school teacher, and I know that interaction, the physical body language, the facial expressions, all those are useful tools for conveying instruction as well. So these are tough choices we're going to have to make.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a lot of great points there. And I mean, this all happened so fast, right? I mean, it was that March where, we had heard about COVID. They had said, mask, 30 days, and that we should be on the other side of this thing. Here we are 2 years later, and so,
Yeah.
I think it's been a steep learning curve. And
this has been the longest 2 weeks of.
That's right.
Yep.
But very good points and very interesting to see as things move forward, how some of these controls can be put in place to mitigate some of those situations, because they are going to happen. So no, that was a great point. Thank you so much for that, Ben. Okay, next question is, what tax implications might remote working create?
Excellent. We already have, at least in the US, we have a tax protocol at least in the federal tax regulation, where if I work from home from a specific location, a specific room or area of a room, where I can apportion that square footage as a home work environment, and I can write off the portion of my mortgage or my lease that I pay proportional to the amount of square footage that I'm using for work purposes. Well, now what happens if my workspace is anywhere in the home I set my laptop? What is it going to mean if I don't have to commute? If I'm given a company car, but there's no company to drive to, I'm just at home. What is this going to mean to the employee, and what is it going to mean to the employer? The employer might love this idea because they can cut down on the number of cubicles they have to maintain. They can slash their office space because their workforce is distributed. But is there going to be some additional seeking of revenue from the tax administrators to recoup some of these losses where they might have had income elsewhere? So that's going to be very interesting. And I don't think anyone has considered these implications going forward.
Right. No, agreed. And as these school systems, open up I don't know that we'll ever go to a full-time type environment. I don't know what the future lies, but I do see more of kind of a hybrid environment moving forward. What are your thoughts on that, Ben?
I've been advocating for distributed learning for more than 10 years. I think the pandemic was a terrible initiative for making this thing happen. We were behind the curve on this, and as you said, it was a giant surprise. And we were reactive instead of proactive in setting it up, applying it. Teachers didn't have the tools or experience on how to use it. But I liked it as an experiment. As a proof of concept model, it showed that we can deliver instruction remotely. And in fact, in my position where I teach certification prep classes, prior to the pandemic, I was traveling half the time and giving classes at in-person locations on customer sites, and half the time I was doing it via the web. Now, all my classes are via the web. And the advantage is I can reach so much more of that global audience, and I can do it at a time that is convenient to the customer, the participant, the student. If we did this with schools, the advantages so much outweigh the disadvantages. For instance, you can never have a school shooting if there is no school. The fact that we've been bringing children together in a single physical location heighten the danger to those children exponentially with no appreciable upside. Plus, if they're not at a physical school plant, you can't have physical bullying. I mean, we can talk about the problems of online bullying, and that may be something we need to address. But nobody can get stabbed while they're online. Nobody can get pregnant when they're online. Nobody can hand somebody some drugs while they're online. And I've seen all these things, and these are endemic in the schools. Moreover, the biggest risk that we ever pose to our students in terms of their physical health and well-being is putting them on a bus twice a day and driving them back and forth to the same location. That is a dangerous situation that does not need to exist. Plus, if we don't do that, we also have the environmental benefits of not wasting the fossil fuels and resources. We don't have to sustain and maintain a giant physical plant where they're all going to be, again, with impact on fossil fuels. Now, what's the downside? The downside is parents suddenly have to become shepherds and babysitters for children that previously were given unto somebody else's care, and that they could feel comfortable with their child being away from home for a certain amount of time while the parent was away from home and performing work. Now you've got the confluence of the parent at home doing work while the child is at home ostensibly doing school, and it makes it difficult for both parties. And we'll have to figure some way around this. We'll have to figure out solutions that are going to be beneficial to everyone involved. But if we can make it happen, it will be so much better than this 19th century school model that we've been tethered to for no appreciable reason for the past 100 years. And I think it's time that we progress.
I couldn't agree more. And that is a different podcast in itself.
Invite me back, please.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Ben, thank you so much for that. And appreciate those answers. I'm looking at the clock here. We're closing on almost 11:30. But before we somewhat wrapped it up, Ben, I just want to give you an opportunity. Any kind of selfless plugs you'd like to do here? Anything that you'd like to talk about yourself?
I'd be glad to. I've recently written a book called Exposed, and it's about privacy, and it actually deals with some of these topics. And it addresses some of the questions I've long had about the concept of privacy. I think that what we consider private is an illusion, that all of our data, whenever it's collected or disseminated, is going to be viewed by someone. It's just that we don't get to decide who that someone is. And while the EU has tried to, and California and New York have tried to institute regulation to change that, all they've done is create a situation where that illusion becomes more magnified, where some entities, such as the government, such as the vendors you're doing business with, have access, a disproportional access to your information, whereas you do not have the equivalent access to their information. And I kind of try to posit a science fiction world where everyone has access to everyone else's data. This will be disturbing for most of us while we get used to this new situation. But once we all have equivalent purview into each other's private data or data, then I think what we'd see is a lot more comfort and a lot more security for all of us. And I think it would just lead to better things after the growing pains have left. So the book is Exposed, available on Amazon. It's fairly cheap. I think it's like $12. So check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations on the book. And again, guys, that's Exposed by Ben Malisau. And you can buy that on Amazon.com. So wonderful. Thank you so much, Ben. And just a quick plug on VTech Solution. We are a global managed IT security firm, specializing in malware, ransomware, endpoint security, application security in the cloud. We also do a lot of SOC assessments, those kind of activities. So if you have any needs there in the audience, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll get you linked up with the right SME and see how we can bring value to your current situation. Okay, I just want to kind of close this out with thanking the guests. Thank you for everybody for joining us on this podcast session of VTech Vocals. we'd love to come up with more podcast sessions here in the near future. Stay tuned for our next session. Have a great day ahead. And if there are some Q&A, let me open the floor real quick. That I almost skipped that part. Are there any questions that the audience has at the moment? I don't believe so at the moment, but if there are, Ben, I'll make sure that we get those to you, via email, and we'll get them responded to and sent back to the proper person.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Michael. I really appreciate it.
Yes, Ben. Thank you for your time today, sir. Have a wonderful day ahead.
You too. Bye.
All right.